What if one day the world woke up smaller, not by borders or territory, but by people? What if, without war, without warning, without explanation, 1 billion human beings vanished at once? No gradual decline, no time to adapt, just absence, and a global economy forced to confront a shock it was never designed to survive. The modern world runs on fragile assumptions. Supply chains assume workers will show up tomorrow. Financial markets assume consumers will keep consuming. Governments assume demographics will move slowly, predictably, safely. Debt, growth models, pension systems, all of them quietly depend on population stability. Now imagine that foundation collapsing in a single moment. This is not just a demographic event. It is an economic rupture. In this alternate economy, factories don't shut down because of recession. They shut down because there are not enough hands. Entire sectors face labor shortages while demand collapses elsewhere. Prices behave irrationally. Markets react before understanding. Algorithms panic faster than humans. And behind it all, AI systems and megacorporations move first because speed becomes power. Stay with me through the simulation. What you are about to discover may change how you see future predictions, global stability, and the hidden vulnerabilities of the world economy. Because this global economy, what if, is not about extinction? It's about imbalance. A world where fewer people does not automatically mean less pressure, less conflict, or less inequality. As governments scramble for control and corporations accelerate automation, the line between recovery and collapse becomes dangerously thin. The disappearance itself is mysterious, but the economic consequences are brutally logical. And perhaps that's the most unsettling part. This scenario doesn't rely on fantasy. It relies on systems we already trust every day. Maybe this future is further away than it seems. Or maybe it's closer than we'd like to admit. And it's exactly here, in the first moments after the shock, that this alternate timeline begins to take shape. In the first hours after the disappearance, confusion dominates the headlines. But beneath the noise, something quieter and more dangerous begins to unfold. Economic systems recalibrating in real time, without consensus, without ethics, without pause. This is where models fail and assumptions are exposed. And if this scenario feels plausible to you, even unsettlingly so, take a moment inside the simulation and tell me in a short comment what stood out the most so far, or whether you believe the global economy could truly absorb a shock of this scale. Your presence here matters. A simple like signals that this kind of long-form, serious exploration of alternate economic futures deserves to reach others who are questioning where the world is heading. And if you choose to stay with this channel, to subscribe and follow these what if economy scenarios, you're helping build a space where future predictions aren't treated as entertainment, but as simulations worth thinking through. Because what happens next isn't abstract. It's measurable. It's structural. And once the initial silence fades, the real consequences begin to surface. In jobs, in prices, in power, and in everyday life. This is the moment when the shock stops being theoretical, and the first years of this new timeline start to take form. In the first years after the shock, the world does not collapse all at once. It stumbles. Economies move out of sync, reacting faster than societies can emotionally process what has happened. Labor shortages appear immediately, but not where most models predicted. Hospitals, logistics hubs, food processing plants, maintenance networks, all suddenly understaffed. At the same time, consumer demand contracts, not from poverty alone, but from uncertainty. People pause. Spending slows. Entire industries experience inflation driven by scarcity, while others fall into deflation as customers disappear. The global economy enters a phase where prices no longer tell the truth. Daily life becomes unpredictable. Jobs vanish in one sector and become irreplaceable in another. Essential services operate on fragile schedules. Supply chains don't break, they hesitate. This hesitation ripples outward, revealing how dependent modern life is on timing, coordination, and human presence. And behind the scenes, decisions are being made that will shape the next decade. Governments respond first with denial, then with emergency measures. Central banks inject liquidity, but money cannot replace missing people. Immigration policies are rewritten overnight. Retirement ages are pushed higher. Labor protections are quietly relaxed. Megacorporations move faster than states, deploying AI systems and automation at a scale never publicly debated. What was once gradual digital transformation becomes mandatory survival infrastructure. Power begins to concentrate, not through conspiracy, but through speed and preparedness. Now I want to go even deeper into this scenario. As years pass, the global order starts to reorganize itself. Nations with younger populations and advanced AI ecosystems stabilize faster. Others fall into prolonged stagnation. Traditional alliances weaken. New economic blocks form around data, automation, and energy efficiency rather than ideology. AI-driven productivity becomes a geopolitical weapon, and the definition of a strong nation quietly changes. By the time this new order begins to stabilize, two extreme futures are visible. In one, abundance emerges. Fewer humans oversee highly productive systems. Work weeks shrink and material scarcity fades. In the other, concentration hardens. Wealth, decision-making, and access to automation collapse into the hands of a narrow elite, while the majority live in managed dependency. Both futures are born from the same shock. Only the choices differ. And beneath all of it, something deeper shifts. Human identity detaches from productivity. Purpose is questioned. Routine dissolves. Societies face a collective mental journey, confronting an uncomfortable truth hidden in the background of progress, that economic systems were never built around meaning, only efficiency. The real transformation isn't financial. It's psychological. If this resonates with you, write in the comments, "That makes sense to me." Because beyond the numbers and systems, there is still one more layer of this future waiting to be uncovered. And it changes everything that comes next. As the timeline moves into years 3 through 7, the shock is no longer new. It is institutionalized. Governments stop reacting and start rewriting the rules of reality. Economic emergencies become permanent states. Labor laws are adjusted first quietly, then openly, extending working lives, redefining employment, lowering protections in exchange for continuity. Retirement, once a promise, becomes a variable. Migration policies are recalibrated not around borders or culture, but around raw economic necessity. People are no longer welcomed as citizens, but as missing components. Central banks continue to intervene, flooding markets with liquidity. But a deeper truth emerges behind the numbers. Capital can stabilize markets, but cannot replace coordination, trust, or human presence. Monetary policy slows the panic, yet structural fragility remains. And into that gap step the megacorporations. Now I want to go even deeper into the scenario. As smaller firms collapse under labor shortages and logistical instability, large corporations with advanced AI systems absorb entire sectors. Automation is no longer an efficiency tool. It becomes economic life support. Governments grow dependent on corporate infrastructure to maintain energy grids, food distribution, healthcare logistics, even digital identity systems. Power doesn't shift through ideology or coups, but through operational control. Whoever keeps systems running becomes indispensable. Over the decade, the global map quietly redraws itself. Nations once considered dominant lose relevance if they cannot scale automation fast enough. New blocks form around data sovereignty, AI manufacturing, and energy efficiency. Influence is measured less by population size and more by algorithmic capacity. A new hierarchy emerges, not announced, but felt. This is the backstage of the future, where decisions are made long before narratives catch up. When this new order begins to stabilize, two extreme economic paths stand clearly apart. In one version of this world, abundance takes shape. Productivity accelerates beyond expectations. Scarcity recedes. Human labor becomes optional in many sectors, freeing time and reshaping social contracts. In the other version, concentration hardens into doctrine. Automation enriches a narrow class, while most of society lives within controlled systems of access and dependency. Both futures claim efficiency. Only one distributes agency. And beneath these structures, something quieter unfolds. Human identity begins to drift. Without work as a central anchor, routine dissolves. Purpose becomes unstable. Societies enter a collective psychological journey. searching for meaning beyond productivity. The truth hidden beneath this future is unsettling. Economic systems adapted faster than human mentalities. The real transformation is not technological, but internal. Write in the comments. I'm on this journey too, because as this timeline continues to unfold, the most important revelation is still ahead, and it challenges what survival actually means in a world that no longer needs everyone. As the timeline stretches into years 7 through 15, the world no longer feels like it is recovering. It feels like it is becoming something else. The initial chaos has settled into patterns, and those patterns reveal a new balance of power. Nations with younger populations, flexible institutions, and deeply integrated automation begin to dominate quietly, not through conquest, but through continuity. Their systems bend without breaking. Their economies adapt without panic. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the old centers of gravity begin to fade. Traditional economic blocks weaken under the weight of legacy structures. Welfare systems designed for larger population strain under demographic reality. Political unions built on scale discover that scale alone is no longer an advantage. Global trade routes rewire themselves, prioritizing efficiency over volume, precision over mass. Fewer people means fewer consumers, but also means fewer delays, fewer bottlenecks, fewer human variables. In this new order, AI-driven economies emerge as de facto superpowers, not defined by flags or armies, but by optimization. Now I want to go even deeper into this scenario. As this reconfiguration stabilizes, two radically different futures become visible beneath the surface. In one, an abundance economy takes shape. Automation compensates for loss, productivity exceeds expectations, and societies redistribute time instead of labor. Work becomes selective. Cities shrink but thrive. The collective mentality shifts toward balance, creativity, and long-term resilience. Scarcity no longer defines daily decisions. In the other future, concentration tightens its grip. Economic power condenses around those who own algorithms, infrastructure, and data. Efficiency becomes a justification for exclusion. Access replaces ownership. Dependency replaces participation. This version of stability is calm on the surface, but brittle underneath, sustained by control rather than consent. Both realities emerge from the same transformation. The divergence is driven not by technology, but by decisions. And as these systems mature, the deepest impact is no longer economic. It is human. Identity, once anchored profession and productivity, begins to drift. Routine loses its authority. Purpose becomes personal rather than prescribed. Societies enter a long psychological journey, navigating a truth hidden behind decades of growth narratives. That work was never just about survival. It was about belonging. When that anchor disappears, something else must take its place. Mentalities shift slowly. Some embrace reinvention. Others resist. The transformation is uneven, filled with quiet revelations and unresolved tension. The future does not announce itself as utopia or collapse. It simply unfolds, one normalized decision at a time. If this part of the journey resonates, write in the comments. That future feels uncomfortably real, because as this alternate world continues to stabilize, a final question begins to surface, one that will define what comes next. As this alternate world continues to unfold, the divergence becomes impossible to ignore. The same shock, the same loss, the same technological foundations. Yet two radically different futures begin to crystallize from the decisions made along the way. In the early years, these paths look similar. Automation expands. AI systems replace missing labor. Productivity rebounds. But over time, the consequences of governance, ownership, and intent reveal a deeper truth hidden beneath the surface. In one timeline, abundance quietly takes hold. Automation does more than stabilize supply chains. It transforms them. Productivity accelerates beyond what the old world believed possible. With fewer people and smarter systems, societies begin to redistribute time rather than labor. Work weeks shorten. Basic needs become predictable again. Wealth still exists, but it circulates. The economy stops demanding constant growth and starts prioritizing balance. This is not a utopia, but it is breathable. People regain mental space to redefine contribution, creativity, and value beyond survival. Now I want to go even deeper into this scenario, because running parallel to this future is another, darker outcome, one built on the same technologies, but driven by different decisions. In this version, efficiency becomes justification. Ownership of AI, data, and infrastructure concentrates into the hands of a narrow elite. Productivity rises, but access does not. Most societies transition into permanent dependency, where participation is conditional and scarcity is managed, not eliminated. Stability exists, but it is brittle. Calm replaces mobility. Control replaces trust. Over the decade, these extremes shape not just economies, but mentalities. In the abundance path, the collective mindset shifts toward long-term thinking. In the concentration path, survival thinking never fully fades. The journey through this transformation exposes a revelation many were unprepared for. Technology did not decide the future. People did, and often by choosing what felt efficient in the moment. When this new order begins to feel normal, the deepest impact is no longer measured in GDP or output. It is measured in identity. Without work as a universal anchor, routine dissolves. Purpose fragments. Some find freedom. Others feel lost. Communities redefine belonging. Education shifts from preparation for jobs to preparation for meaning. The human question quietly replaces the economic one. Behind the systems and structures lies a truth rarely spoken aloud. Removing people from necessity forces societies to confront why they exist at all. And that realization sets the stage for what comes next, a final tension still unresolved in this timeline. If this resonates with your own sense of the future, write in the comments. I'm on this journey too, as this altered world settles into its new equilibrium. The most profound transformation no longer unfolds in markets or institutions, but inside people themselves. With fewer humans and systems that no longer depend on universal labor, the meaning of work begins to dissolve. In the early years, societies try to preserve familiar structures. Jobs are rebranded. New roles are invented. Productivity is still treated as identity. But over time, that framework weakens. The old promise, contribute economically and you'll belong, stops applying at scale. Along the decade, a quiet shift takes place. Entire cultures begin to redefine success, not around output, but around relevance. Education moves away from career preparation and toward adaptability, creativity, and interpretation. Routine, once imposed by necessity, becomes optional for some and absent for others. The impact is uneven. Those with access to systems of abundance experience liberation. Those without feel displaced, watching a world that functions without asking for their participation. Now I want to go even deeper into this scenario, because beneath these surface changes lies a truth rarely confronted. For centuries, economic necessity structured human value. Remove that necessity and value itself becomes unstable. People search for a purpose in community, in exploration, in meaning, but also in identity conflicts and new belief systems. The mental journey is not smooth. It is filled with resistance, reinvention, and moments of revelation that challenge long-held assumptions about progress. As this new order stabilizes, legacy takes on a different weight. With fewer people, individual actions echo louder. Contribution is no longer measured by productivity, but by impact. Some societies embrace this shift, cultivating collective purpose beyond economics. Others struggle, clinging to obsolete hierarchies that no longer align with reality. The difference is not technological. It is psychological. Behind the visible systems lies the hidden question of this future. If humans are no longer economically necessary, what makes them essential? The answer varies across cultures, across classes, across generations. And in those variations, new tensions form. Not violent, but existential. The future does not collapse. It asks. And the response to that question determines whether this world evolves toward coherence or fragmentation. This is where the simulation becomes most uncomfortable, because it stops being about them and starts being about us, about our decisions, our mentalities, and the stories we choose to believe about our own relevance. If this part of the journey resonates with you, Write in the comments. That makes sense to me, because beyond this point, one final layer of this alternate future begins to surface, and it reframes everything that came before. As this simulation approaches its most revealing phase, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. A world with 1 billion fewer people does not simply contract. It exposes itself. Economic systems, stripped of excess labor and constant growth assumptions, reveal what they were truly optimized for all along. Efficiency over resilience, speed over meaning, continuity over inclusion. What once felt abstract now becomes visible in everyday decisions, in institutional behavior, in the quiet normalization of a radically different world. Over the years, humanity begins to recognize a pattern hidden beneath the shock. The disappearance was not the cause of transformation. It was a trigger. The real momentum came from choices already embedded in the system. Automation was waiting. Centralization was waiting. The delegation of human judgment to algorithms was waiting. This event simply accelerated timelines that were already in motion, compressing decades into years. Now I want to go even deeper into this realization, because when this new order stabilizes, the most unsettling question emerges not from economics, but from intention. Was the system designed to serve people, or were people designed to serve the system? In a world where human labor is no longer required at scale, that question can no longer be postponed. The answer shapes governance, culture, and the boundaries of belonging. Some societies interpret this moment as liberation. Others experience it as erasure. The mental journey diverges sharply. Collective identity fractures into competing narratives about relevance, dignity, and contribution. And beneath those narratives lies a truth few are comfortable confronting, that the future does not guarantee purpose. It demands to be redefined. What feels like an ending begins to resemble a rehearsal, not for loss, but for automation at scale, for a future where economic value and human value are no longer automatically aligned. The shock becomes a mirror, reflecting design flaws that were always present but rarely questioned. And in that reflection, humanity sees both its ingenuity and its blind spots. This is where the simulation refuses to offer closure, because the most important variable remains unresolved. Not technology, not capital, but choice. The decisions made after stability returns. The values encoded into systems once survival is no longer priority. That is where the real future is written. If this reflection stays with you, write in the comments, I'm on this journey too. Because beyond this point, one final question still lingers, and answering it may redefine what progress actually means. If you made it all the way to the end of the simulation, you're already part of a smaller group. People willing to slow down and think deeply about where the global economy might actually be heading. This channel exists for exactly that purpose. Exploring what-if economy scenarios, alternate timelines, and future predictions that go beyond headlines and surface-level optimism. If this journey added clarity, tension, or even discomfort in the right way, subscribing is simply a way to stay connected to these simulations as they continue to unfold. Each video is another layer, another question, another possible future examined with patience and honesty. You can also leave a short comment letting me know you stayed until the end. Writing something like, "This future really made me think," helps mark this moment, and it shows that this kind of long-form, reflective analysis matters. And if this exploration resonated with you, a simple like helps the scenario reach others who are searching for deeper understanding of alternate economies and global transformations. There's another simulation waiting right here that connects directly with what you've just seen. Click and keep going with me there, because the next future raises a question we haven't confronted yet. Which alternate economic future should I explore next?